All right, Lisa, thanks so much for being on the Friends with Wheels podcast. My first question that I have for you is tell the audience a little bit about you and how you started.
Well, long story, but long story short, my background is in media and advertising, business, marketing, all those fun things. And over 2 decades ago, I acquired multiple disabilities, visible and invisible. So now I've essentially put those two together and work with business, government, individuals, industry to make their content more inclusive. So I'm a speaker and a writer, and at the moment doing research with the university.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, because that's what I was going to get into. Like, what do you do as a speaker and writer? Because you do a lot of stuff in those areas.
That's right. Yeah. So like I mentioned, it's combining my professional and personal backgrounds, and I realize there are a lot of business people out there who understandably want to be inclusive but don't know where to start. So I help them hold their hand essentially, walking them through how to make text more inclusive, how to make scripts more inclusive of disability and those sorts of things. So it's not complicated, but it can be a minefield for people who maybe don't have experience in the sector.
Mm-hmm. And so, what kind of access things do you do to make things more accessible? Because for people with disabilities, it's different and it's complex. So,
It is. It's different and it's complex. And as your audience can appreciate, there's no one size fits all. So we aim for what will help a large portion of the disability community. So something as simple as captions and also trying to avoid those stereotypes and those terrible tropes of as Dal Young called it, inspiration porn, and only positioning people with disabilities and advertising as tragic burdens. So that could be something as simple as casting or a few words in a script or something like that. So we can see it really obviously when I look at a script or a document, I'm like, oh, that needs to change, that needs to change. But perhaps for someone who's not as involved in the disability community, it can be a little bit harder to see. So pointing out some red flags for them so that they aren't being called out for being tokenistic or commercializing disability just by making a few tweaks to content.
hmm. And so, I know you also said that you are a writer, a content writer. Is that correct?
I have written content, so my background in advertising was to write everything from scripts on TV, radio, TV, print, magazines, newspapers. I know there aren't that many anymore. So these days it would all be digital, but writing that sort of content. But I also write these days for different publications nationally, internationally about inclusion and about disability and also about things that have nothing to do with disability because as you appreciate we're complex and our lives don't revolve just around disability.
Hmm. Yeah, because I was going to ask like a little bit about that to dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, so do you mean what sort of things I write about?
Mm. Uh-huh. Yeah, what sorts of things you write about, that kind of stuff?
Okay, so a lot of the writing I've done apart from disability and inclusion and disability advocacy, I have written a lot about women's health issues, women, whether it's body confidence or something like that. So because it's an area that I have an interest in, I also have experience in. So I have in the past written a lot of content for women about body and those sorts of things.
Hmm. And so like when you write that type of content, do you like seek out individual people with lived experience or like how do you sort of bring that sort of content to life, so to speak?
Okay, well, I suppose I'm the main one with the lived experience. So often it'll be about tell my own stories, but I also have people with disabilities to draw on. And whether I'm writing about women's issues or the disability sector, it's really important to me to bring voices from the community into my piece because I'm only one person and I don't represent everybody. So getting all sorts of intersectional voices into that content is also really important. And that's a hot tip for anybody who is um, writing for the disability community or with the disability community, is that co-design aspect. So having people with lived experience as part of the work you were doing, whether it's research or articles or reports or something else.
Mm-hmm. What have you learned in doing this kind of work, both in the disability advocacy space, but also in the content writing space?
Well, the content writing space, the biggest thing I learned was that I can still do it. So I lost 9 of my fingertips. My eyesight, I'm over 25% blind now. And because of my permanent brain injury, after I acquired my disabilities, I thought, I can never write again. What am I going to do? So I taught myself how to write again, just sitting at mum and dad's kitchen table after hospital and learning how to do that. So knowing that I can still write, that was that was a big learning curve. But some of the things I learned weren't so much what I learned, but what was reinforced to me. So I always knew that the disability community was not a monolith. Um, but doing more work in that space, it's reinforced to me that we're not a monolith. We are complex individuals with all sorts of different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm. So, and what sorts of pieces of technology do you use to write content um like get like in ways that you can sort of navigate around sort of your disability? Because you said you can't use your fingers or have your upper extremities or something like
Yeah,
that. So what
yeah.
sorts of technology do you use? Because I remember I used a speech to text. I believe it was called Dragon.
Yep.
It was a text to speech software where you would speak into a microphone headset and then speak
Hmm.
as you were narrating, you know,
That's
what you're trying to write. So what was it that like for you? What sorts of technological stuff do you use now that help
now.
you with your disability?
Okay, so maybe 20 odd years ago, I remember an OT introducing me to Dragon. But back then, or that time ago, it was really complex. And to get it to work, you had to go through lots and lots of steps. And with my neurodivergence, I don't have a lot of patience for that. So these days, fortunately, speech to text and those sorts of that sort of software, it's really accessible for me, which is fantastic. So I do use a combination of speech to text, but I did learn to type again with my stubby little fingers. It's not particularly graceful, but I do use a keyboard. Although my reading, I can still read, obviously, but reading long documents because I'm researching at the moment, all the research papers, I listen to it almost exclusively on audio, um, and just drop all of my documents into a website called Speechify. And it's reasonable app to me. And I love that because I don't think I could do the research I'm doing without that sort of software.
Yeah. Because I remember I would struggle with like reading long text because it would take long for time for me to process information. Like even with books nowadays, I read books now like out loud. I know it might sound crazy, but I think I've seen like research like reading out loud improves your memory comprehension, stuff like that. So, but that's kind of how I sort of read long, complicated text.
Yep. Yeah, so I listen to audiobooks, exclusively audiobooks, but I've also found that using both or using the audio is a really good way for me to read through my work because there are things that I don't pick up when I'm just reading it off the screen. But when I hear it back, I do pick up my whether it's a spelling error or something else. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. I'll go back and edit it. So it's been really useful for me as a research tool as well.
Mm-hmm. And is it and what sorts of things are do you have going on in the horizon that people should should know about? Are you doing something coming up, or what's in it for you?
Well, at the moment, I'm doing my PhD, so I have no life, and I'm hoping to finish that. So, and after that, my husband and I just want to do some travel. I think I haven't seen him for a few years doing all my study, but there's more I want to do in the disability research space for sure, particularly with the media advertising industries, because there's a lot of room there for improvement, but particularly um, elevating the voices of those who are already doing incredible work. So there's an organization here in Australia called Inclusively Made, and they help brands and business create inclusive content. And there are some producers working behind the scenes who work with the big organizations, but helping them to amplify their message and make more people with disabilities, when I say visible, not just putting us on TV for a second, whether it's in a podcast or in a news story, but just uh, seamlessly making us part of the narrative. That's really important to me. So it's normalized, for one of a better word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, yeah, just kind of like getting the word out in the community through all organizations, conferences, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to a conference at the end of the year, in Perth, in Australia, the other side of the country. And I'm really looking forward to that because there are some other researchers with disabilities who I'll be meeting. And there are a lot of researchers with disabilities or neurodivergence, but they are too afraid to disclose that, which is unfortunate. And there are plenty of people in workplaces who are the same. So being able to meet other researchers with disabilities is really exciting because I think it's great that they're disclosing, but I want to remove that barrier for people to disclose, or help to remove that barrier, for people to disclose by helping to normalize the disabled experience, because we're the world's largest minority and something that anyone can become a part of. You can't suddenly wake up, or have a car accident or something and become black or any other minority.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
disability, you can become a part of it at any time, as a lot of your listeners know. So helping to normalize that experience in mainstream media and popular culture is really important to me.
Mm-hmm. And like this is a kind of a big picture question. So what can be done to sort of educate folks about, what disabilities are and how to eradicate stigmas? Because there's a lot of stigmas around disability, physical disability, just disability in general. So how do you sort of combat that? What's your take?
That's a huge question, and there is no one single answer. And I'm not saying that to make people think it's too hard, but it's also the sort of thing, we're talking about cultural change, social attitudes, and those sorts of things. That takes years, decades to change. So I use the example of women's rights and culturally diverse inclusion as examples. Like, there is still a lot of discrimination for people, for Black people, for women. However, it has changed a lot over the decades. It's not perfect, but it has changed a lot. Disability is a couple of decades behind that. So we need to take that same approach of slowly chipping away at it. And that's where media and advertising can play a really big role in reshaping our knowledge systems around what we know or think we know about disability. Because you're right, there are a lot of stigmas and stereotypes. So people who perhaps want to learn more, you might know one person with disabilities, great, but that's definitely not everybody. So we, like the non-disability community, we are complex, we're multidimensional, and there's so many things about all of us that don't fit neatly into one box or one stereotype. So just because you know one person with disabilities, that's only one person. Really, perhaps even jumping online and finding out more from other content creators is another great way to expand your knowledge, I suppose, of the Disability Network.
Mm-hmm. And like my last question is, what can people do to find out more information about you or your work?
I have a website, lisacox.co, lisacox.co, and that's also my Instagram handle. I'm on LinkedIn, and like I said, at the moment, I'm studying, so there's not a lot of time to do much. But my website has a lot more information about what I do and my backstory and things like that. If um if anyone's looking for some extra reading, but jump on Instagram, say hi. Businesses, I promote a lot of content on LinkedIn from other incredible people who are doing great work in the disability space, helping to amplify their voices, they promote their work. So that's always a place to go, if you're looking for more information around business. But I do share that on my Instagram stories too.
Mm-hmm. Okie dokie.